Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Katy Ward. So, Katy, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Yeah, I am Katy Ward. I live in Austin, Texas. I moved here a couple of years ago, and I'm a certified story brand guide. I'm on my completed 7 years. I was certified in 2018, which was, I think, one of the first story brand cohorts. So I've been doing copywriting for mostly wellness, sustainability, thought leader, kind of transformation focused brands for my career. And then also any founders I connect with, and I'm all referral based as of right now. So yeah, that's what I do. And I love it. Lots of listening, lots of writing, lots of like hearing founders' hearts. And it's great.
So, how did you kind of get into this in the first place?
It's funny. Story brand, at least copywriting, was kind of always coming for me. I grew up around the hero's journey. And for those of you who are not familiar with the story brand framework, it's based on the hero's journey Joseph Campbell came up with and that we now use for screenplays, for movies. So it's that whole hero's journey framework, but condensed into 7 steps to use as a marketing tool for positioning and to make it really easy to understand how attention works. So just because I hadn't said that, that's what story brand is. So my dad was a professor, and I mean, from the time they could start reading literature and books to us, my parents did, and my dad would kind of talk about this hero's journey framework. And we were like a big literature story family. And I was an English major, and I always knew I didn't want to take like a day job, a desk job. But I thought that entrepreneurship was like when you have a brick and mortar business and you like own a store or something. I didn't really know what it was. And so I started freelancing in college. And then when I moved to San Diego, I was freelancing and kind of like trying to figure out, I didn't know what branding was. I kind of thought marketing was like ads. So I just experimented in freelance for a long time. And then one of the teams I worked with in a contract role, this amazing gal, she was like, you got to come to this marketing conference with me. And she brought me. And that's where I saw Don Miller give the story brand keynote. And it was like right after the book, Building a Story Brand, had just come out. So everybody was talking about this book, and he gives this keynote and he's like, it's the hero's journey. I'm certifying marketers. And it was like my compass just like pinged to north. And I was like, that's what I'm doing. And I mean, like immediately within a month or so, I had kind of like cut off the main contract agency I was working with, booked flights to Nashville to get the certification. And I was like, I'm going to have clients in 2 months. I don't know how, but this is what I'm doing. And so it was like, there was nothing else I was going to do, basically.
So, in terms of, this kind of who you work with, right? Because there's so many verticals, so many different brands, and you can be here in the US or even all over the world. What does that kind of look like in terms of who you work with, kind of where they're based out of as well?
Yeah, it started with whoever I could work with was actually really important. Like the niche conversation, I don't think the niche conversation is relevant as a freelancer or as a solo entrepreneur or even as a startup. Like maybe if you have a product, you start with a niche, but if you're a service provider, then starting with like, who can I work with? Who wants to work with me? And then slowly figuring out like, who do I like? That's really important. So for the first couple of years, it was a lot of people in San Diego where I lived who had just read this book. And I mean, it was such a buzzy book at the time that I would say I was a story brand guide and people would be like, oh, thank God, I just read it and I need your help. And I noticed that I liked working with personal development oriented brands and also wellness because I was up to my eyeballs in personal development books at the time. I had like graduated college maybe a year before, and that culture in San Diego, it's like lots of coaches and courses and health, and I was just voracious. I like couldn't get enough of it. So I loved working on those brands because I would learn. And then as my referral wheel built up, which took about 3 years, I was a patient of a lot of holistic wellness. And then my family is really in health. Like they're all doctors and nurses and health coaches, and kind of been the only one that like went off and did writing and art. And yeah, so over time, I just started noticing this is the kind of person that I like to work with. And at first, I kind of discovered the B Corp movement and like for benefit companies while I was in San Diego. And I was like, I really want to work with these brands. But then later, as I did more research on like how many benefit companies are there that need messaging and don't have an internal copywriter versus like how many wellness companies, clinics, authors, like coaches, what is that demographic like in terms of volume? And the wellness was just like, I mean, so much bigger, right? So I still do work with sustainability companies when they come up, and I love to, but there's just so many, like I said, clinics, coaches, people in wellness, that flywheel has been getting bigger and bigger, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like especially here in Austin, like I live here as well, and it's definitely kind of very similar to the way that you described San Diego. And I guess like on that note, right, like when you're going into like an engagement, or when you see kind of some of these coaches or folks out there today, like what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making when they're really trying to focus on branding and being top of mind for people?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest mistake is that they don't focus on it, basically. Like, and there's a period when you're starting where you're just trying to figure things out. And the most important thing is to have clients, right? And so then you're kind of hustling along, and you like patch things together once, and then you patch them together again, and then you hire someone and they repatch. And so the biggest problem that I'll notice is that people just haven't worked on their messaging specifically yet. They've kind of like had their designers write their copy, and they've added people to their team, and everybody's saying something different. Or they'll kind of expand their services, and they won't know who their audience is or which problem they're solving. So that's the first one. It's kind of like not realizing how their messaging is holding them back. Even like internally, not being able to articulate, here's what I do in a way that it really lands in like 5 seconds. That kind of takes something away from the experience of the vision that a founder has, right? They're like, I believe in it and I feel it. So like, why aren't other people feeling it? There must be something wrong, or it's like not valid. And it's kind of hard to see that it's a messaging problem. So after that, like we're problem aware, we need help with messaging. The next problem is probably that, when you have something you're up to, everything about it, everything, top to bottom, front to back, you're excited about it. And so when you talk about it and when you write about it, all of the information gets weighted the same. And it's hard to know what your audience needs to know first. So ordering the information to keep attention, and kind of understanding that like you have to frame it about the customer is the hero, it's about their problem, and I'm the guide, and knowing this order of operations, and then slowing down how you share. So it's like one little thing at a time. That's the next problem that people run into. They're like, I know I have the problem of knowledge. I know everything. And so what do I not say? So it makes sense. And that's like inescapable. That's what it means to be a founder. It's very hard to talk about ourselves, because it's not because we don't know what we do. It's because we know so much about what we do that we can't like just say the very first most important thing and nothing else. And that's more of what I'm doing. It's like I'm listening, I'm pulling out the emotions in the voice, and I'm ordering the information so that we kind of like earn people's attention and like give them one little piece of information at a time, because people's attention spans are so short,
Right.
Yeah.
And in terms of messaging, right? Because obviously, especially nowadays, there's so many different platforms which have to, kind of be aligned in sync, right? Like you have like your website, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever other platform. So how do you ensure that those things are kind of communicating and working in sync?
Yeah. Well, we always start with like, what is your sales cycle? Where are people finding you? What's the highest volume that people are finding you? And then with that, it's also really important to work on the owned platforms first. So you own your website, you own your email list. I heard a great distinction I don't know if you saw it, but there was an awesome newsletter conference here in Austin last month.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I think I did see that.
yeah, I went, and it was great.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
one of the distinctions that I learned, that it was just a good way to put it, was that this social media is your discovery platform, but don't rely on it for building relationships and converting sales and maintaining customers so much. That needs to be on like an owned platform like email. And so I don't really work on social media copy. I'll build a brand message guide, and that's like, here's where you go to know what to say on your social media. And it's like a production guide, right? So we do the brand message guide, and then we do the website copy, and then we do emails. But those discovery platforms, like they're just not like, even if we do ads that go on social media, we can still look at data and kind of see how that's working. But yeah, I'll do like audits on LinkedIn and even across some of those other profiles once we have the core messaging. But it's the most important, that's the priority, is like, you got to have your core messaging in a production guide so everybody understands it, and then work on the things you own first. And then it's really easy to kind of just use those same lines and copy paste them onto your discovery platforms, and maybe adjust like how they're using their energy to focus on building and maintaining relationships rather than just like dumping into kind of an unreliable algorithm, Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think especially nowadays, right? Like authenticity is so important because AI is everywhere, and people can just kind of tell, right? Like they can tell if everything is being done with AI. So it's important to really have that authenticity and be able to speak to your audience. So I guess like on that note, how do you kind of like effectively use AI, if at all, in 2025 to really like keep having this good message of your brand story and to be super authentic as well?
Yeah. I love that you brought up authenticity. That's great. And I have stopped saying that I'm a copywriter, because as soon as I say that, people will be like, AI, what about AI? So
Exactly.
now I've gone back to being like, I do brand messaging, I do use it, but it takes a lot of prompting and it's never copy paste. And I don't use it very often. Like if I'm using it, it'll be like, okay, give me 10 different options for this subject line, and I'll maybe use none of them. And I think the distinction is that at least what I'm really good at is really deep listening and creating the kind of conversation environment where people can access the emotions and the experience of a brand and that extraction, and then making it really, really succinct in their voice. That's what I'm best at. So even if I might put, here are some AI prompts you can use in their messaging guide, you basically have to be an amazing prompt engineer and already have your brand message and your archetype and your voice and your tone and example copy if you want to use AI well, for maybe social media, something that's going to go away really quickly, maybe a blog post.
Right.
Where there's not going to be as much scrutiny. But like even now, Google knows when your blog posts are AI.
Exactly.
And so with that authenticity, it's like, it's actually been really great for me because I really like writing in a very human conversational tone. And with more and more AI and more commoditization of everything, people are really like, the level of skepticism for marketing is on the ceiling. Like they want humans, they want relationship. And like even outside of business, that conversation I hear all the time, especially in Austin. They're like, if you put up an event, I will be there yesterday. I mean, people they want human touch. And so that's I guess one of the fun things is like when I was starting my business and there wasn't as much AI, I could do a brand script and it could sound very clear, and not necessarily have as much voice and tone, just be like super, super clear and obvious. And now there's a story brand framework, which makes a clear message. And then there's all this like human tone, personality, connection. And then like that customer journey where you're creating connection over and over and over and over. And it's kind of made it more fun for me. Yeah.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, it's good to definitely mix things up as much as you can, but just be mindful of those things. And I guess in terms of your business, right? Obviously that we just started here in Q2 of 2025. So what are some of your biggest goals for the rest of this year?
Yeah, I am redoing my website right now. I'm really excited about it because I can design. I only design for myself. I stopped selling design like 5 months into my business because I was like, wow, this is so subjective. And like I either could be really, really good at design or really good at copy. And yeah, anyway, so I design for myself and I can also develop, but only for me. It's just terrible to do for other people. But yeah, so I'm redoing my website right now. It's really colorful. And I'll be relaunching that probably next week. It's almost done. So there's that. And then I would love to start doing copy workshops in Austin, just because I've had so much success doing in-person events for other interests that I have, So like half-day workshops specifically for wellness, personal brand ones, the kind where we kind of like go over story brand and then we actually workshop some messaging. And I think people would really like that here. And then right now, online digitally, I am kind of only a copywriter, brand messaging person on my LinkedIn, and everywhere else I'm leaning into my personal brand, which is more like art and creative writing. And this is I know it's kind of blurry, but this is my art. So that's like my other thing that I do. And as I've been leaning into it, I've been like, wow, like if I'm going to shift my attention here a little bit more, like I really want to make sure the copywriting is secure and I'm even generating leads. Like I usually have a slow summer and I kind of like that. But because of what I'm trying to do with my personal brand, I'm like, I'd like to be going all summer with the copy to be able to fuel all these things I'm up to. So all that to say, I'm just about to start leveraging LinkedIn a little bit more to build referral relationships and just to learn about it. I honestly don't know as much about how to use it right now. So I have a good friend in town who's like a specialist. So that's kind of what's coming for the copy business. I mean, my services have been the same, and I tried out being a fractional CMO and I was like, wow, I hate this. And I've tried growing it in other ways. And I found for my lifestyle and like the way that I think, just being a solo freelancer and doing these overall brand copy projects and then having a couple of retainer clients that I really love is like perfect. It's great. So I'll just be doing more of that, even if it's more than before and with a cool new website and all that. It's still the same.
That's exciting. So if you could go back in time to before you got started with this business, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
One of the best things back then was that, like, I think if I knew what I know now, I would have been way more terrified to start. Like, I just was like gloriously naive. I was like, I'm just going to get clients and then I'm just going to like live in San Diego on my client work that is pennies. And I don't even really know how I survived that for a few years. But I think if to make that process easier for Katy in her early 20s, I think I would have just emphasized relationships, which is what I was doing, but like maybe given her more ways to build more relationships. I did the StoryBrand keynote a lot. I was like super extroverted, super curious. I was meeting people all the time. But yeah, to just not be afraid to be in rooms where I thought people were like way farther along in their career than I was, and go ahead and serve those people and like be okay with having clients that were a little bit critical of my work early on. And that because I was the kind of person that would do it 10 times to get it right. And yeah, to kind of not be afraid of that.
That's good advice. If somebody watching this wanted to reach out to you, wanted to work with you, do you mind sharing your website or social media?
Yeah.
Best ways to get in contact.
Yeah. So my business is called New Story Marketing, because we're writing a new story for your brand. And also because it's wellness and impact, we're like creating new beliefs for the world, like for people to really lean into and transform with. So New Story Marketing, that's the website, newstorymarketing.com. And then my email is Katy, Katy, @newstorymarketing.com. And then, yeah, I'm KatyWard, Katy Ward on LinkedIn. I don't think there's another story brand guide named Katy Ward. There are a lot of other Katy Wards, but I'm the only story brand one. And then my social media is also my name with 2 underscores in between, but you're going to find a lot more like art and my newsletter and just more like a personal brand on there. So, but I'm on there all the time. So if you message me on either LinkedIn, any of those things, I'll respond. Yeah.
I'm Katy. Thanks so much for your time today. And wishing you the best of luck in 2025.
Thank you. Yeah, you too.